We ran into another problem today. You know, it's it's really aggravating, dealing with people and dealing with people with your own money. It's like people don't understand when they overstep boundaries with you. And it's like they don't care because they think that they know better than you, no matter what their age is or what their association is with you. They're just thinking like, all right, well, I know better than this person, so I'm going to deem it correct. And they're not going to say anything about that. So what I'm talking about is that today my sister Belinda comes in and, you know, she gets my package from outside and then she says, okay, I think we need to how much money are we giving you next month? Because they changed the amount of money that I was making. It went from 1171 to 800 this month. So she's sitting there, she's asking me, she's like, so how much money are you going to get this month? So I'm like, we're going to keep it as $200. We're going to save $200 and I'm going to get $300 every 2 weeks. And she's like, $300? That seems like a lot. And I'm like, what do you mean it's a lot? Like, that's really not a lot. Why do you think that $300 every 2 weeks is a lot of money? How does that work in your mind for a person to sit there and be like, I think you can live off $150 every week in America? So she's just sitting there. She was like, I think that's a lot. And I'm just like, okay, you think that's a lot, but it's really not a lot. So I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I think you should be saving more money. And I'm like, why would I save more money? And then I tried to make my argument, but I know it's a bad argument. Like, it doesn't really make sense. But where I'm coming from is that, what are you saying that apparently makes more sense than what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, where are you coming from saying that, hey, I think that you should receive less money per month because I think that you can do it? You know, it's kind of like a challenge. It's kind of like saying, you know what, I think you can work with less. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, $150 every week. What can I do with that? Now, if I go to New York for that week, right? Transportation is the most expensive thing when you go to New York. In New York, you're paying like, all right, let's break it down real quick. So you get an Uber or Lyft, whatever, Lyft or Uber. It doesn't really freaking matter, does it? You get a Lyft or an Uber to the train station, right? All right, that alone is $15. So you just spent $15 right there. Okay, that's $15. Now, train to New York and back. We're not even going to talk about how much it costs in New York because we're not going to take the Uber in New York. But let's backtrack a little bit. So you're going to take a Lyft to the train station. That's $15. You take the train to New York. Luckily, I have a discount. So that's going to be around $6. So it's $14 round trip. You get a $14 round trip ticket to New York. So right now you're at about $30, right? So then from there, you have to take the subway to wherever your destination is. That's about $2.50. So you're going to need to take that there and back. So that's $2.50 plus another $2.50. That's $5. So you're at about $35 right there. And then, right, you have to remember that you're coming back from the train station back to your house. That's another $15. So that right there is $50. You just spent $50 just on transportation. That is just transportation. So you have $150 that week. You just spent $50 on transportation, right? So you're sitting there like, okay, what do I have to work with now? So this is one day, guys. Remember, this is one day out of your week. So I'm sitting there like, all right, well, I just spent $50. Now you're in New York. What if you need to get something to eat? So a coffee and a Chipotle wrap from Dunkin' Donuts costs about $10. So that's $10 right there, okay? That's your snack. Let's label that as a snack. You got a coffee, and it's a small coffee. It's a small coffee, iced coffee, and it's a Chipotle wrap. So I don't know how it comes out to $10, but you're in New York, so it's going to come out to $10. So now you're at $60 right there. Now, your friend likes to go to restaurants, so you can work around that problem. So my friend likes to go to restaurants, and she's like, all right, let's go to the restaurant. Let's go eat. We never see you. And I'm like, all right, fine, cool. But then I talked her down. I feel bad doing this. I'm like, you know what? I can't afford going half with you. I can only afford paying for my own dinner, because this is what May does. She gets her dinner, and then she gets sides with the dinner. So she gets like 3 sides. And then, so she gets the ramen. You got the ramen bowl. And then you got the bamboo shoots, the garlic, and whatever is something that you want to just try out of sheer just like, let's try this confidence. You know what I mean? So you're trying that third thing out. And then she gets drinks on top of that. So her drink of sake. And then you got to add the other drinks on top of that too. So you got to add Coca-Cola, ramen, and the water is free, luckily. So just for one person, that's about like, we'll give it a decent number. Like, that's about $50, $60 for one person. So I get my ramen. And of course I eat some of her sides, but I don't drink anything. So drinking that's fine, right? You don't have to drink, so you're not spending money like that. But going half with her, the meal comes out to about like $80, around $90. Plus gratuity, it comes out to about $100. So to go half with her, it would cost $50. So there's another $50 out of your hands. So now you're at $110 for eating a snack, transportation, and dinner. That's just one meal, guys. Meaning that I went there, usually when I go to New York, I get there around like 12 o'clock. So that means I could only have a snack and a meal. And then that's it. So we're at 110. That is being generous. That is being like, you're not taking any of the risks. You're not taking an Uber in New York. And my sister wants me to take an Uber back to the train station because she says that, hey, it's dangerous in New York. So I want you to take an Uber to the train station. I don't want you to take the subway. So I'm like, okay. So I didn't tell May that, but we decided on doing that anyway. She was like, do you want to take the Uber or do you want to take the train? I was like, let's take the train. At first I was like, let's take the train. Then I remember what my sister said. She's like, the subway is dangerous. I want you to take an Uber and you can ask me for money. So I'm like, all right, I'm not even going to ask my sister for money. I'll ask May for money. Actually, I don't ask May for money. May automatically offers. She's like, you know what? I'll pay for the Uber to get you to the train station. And I'm like, nah, I don't want you to pay that. I'll take the subway. And then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, you know what? How about I take the Uber? I feel like that'll be better. So I take the Uber and she sends me like $30. The Uber itself, how much does the Uber cost? $26 plus tip. Tip is like $3 or $4. So you're sitting there like $30 for, it's a 10, not even a 10-minute ride. It's like an 8-minute ride. So I'm sitting there like, bro, that's crazy. But I'm not saying anything because I didn't really pay for it. May is like, let me cash app you. I got you. Don't worry about it. So the last time I went to New York, May paid for everything. She paid for the dinner. She paid for the Uber. I paid for my general transportation, which cost about $50. And then plus the snack that I bought myself, which came out to $60. So if I don't pay for a meal, then I spend about $60. Now I can go to the store and I can get like ramen and I can get drinks, and that will come out to about like $20. So I could spend $20 on a meal and I can get like 2 meals out of the day. Because remember, if we only eat that one dinner, I get there at around 12 o'clock. I only eat a snack and dinner. I used to be able to do it though. I used to be able to go to New York and have absolutely no money on me. And then when I needed something to eat, May worked at a restaurant, so I would just get something out of her fridge. You know, she would bring over leftovers and I would just eat that. And that was when I was selling weed and I didn't really have money. All I was doing was flipping, and sometimes I was using my credit cards to get some food, but mostly I was using my credit cards for my apartment. That's how I was living. Very measly life. So when she says, I think that you should save more money, I'm sitting there like, I'm being blown away. I'm like, bro, I already saved $200 a month, right? So in 10 months, I saved $2,000. And I'm like, I think that's enough. Don't you think that's enough? She's like, no, I don't think that's enough. And I'm like, what do you mean that's not enough? Like, how much more money do you want me to save out of? So in total, I make about, I think like $12,000, $13,000. And then I save about $2,000. So 13,000 minus 2,000 is about 11,000. I could do the math real quick. Let me do the math real quick. So if I'm making 1171 times 12, I'm making $14,052. So if I save $200 a month times that by 12, I'm saving $2,400 a month. So we can do 1452, because I know what some people are going to say. They're going to be like, well, are you saving a percentage of what you're making? So let's do that real quick. Let's do 2,400 divided by 14,052. No. We're supposed to do that the other way. That's about 17%. So people will say around 20%, 15 to 20%. Chat GPT or Google Gemini says that it should be about 10 to 15% because of how much you make. You know what I mean? Like, it's about your mental health as well. That's what a big thing was. It's like, you can't expect a person to live way underneath their means. Like, you can't expect them to be like, okay, I'm just going to give up everything. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to buy food out because I can't afford it. You can't do that to a person. That's like making them live in jail. So when it when it came down to asking Gemini, I was like, how much should I be saving? It said you should be saving about like 10%, 15% at most. So right now I'm saving about 17% of my income. So I talked to my other sister. I was like, how much should I be saving? And she's like, well, this is how much I save. And I'm like, okay, you save that much money. I forgot what the breakdown was, but she makes about like 7,000 a month, and she saves about $2,000 of that 7,000. So 2,000 divided by 7,000, she saves about 30%. And I'm like, all right, cool, that makes sense. You save about 30%. So out of each paycheck, I was like, you make $7,000 a month, but you got to realize that I only make $1,100 a month. So how would that work? So 7,000 divided by 2 is $3,500. And she still saves about like 30% of 3,500 times 0.3. So she saves about $1,000, $1,050 per month. And I'm like, all right, cool. That makes sense for you. But let's do 30%. 1171, multiply that by 30%. It would be about $351 per month. So I'm like, all right, that's how you're going about it. That's how she was going about it. She's like, this is how much I make. This is how much I save. So maybe you should be able to save as much as I make, as I save. And I'm like, all right, that sounds good on paper for you to tell another person, hey, this is how much I save. Maybe you should be saving this much. But you got to realize that the amount that I make and the amount that you're saving is only split into 2 weeks for you. The amount that I make in a month is about how much you make every week. So each week you're saving, the amount that you're saving. But you got to realize that in a month, look at how much you make. And you got to realize that for your mental health, you're able to save that much only because you make that much. You know what I mean? So you're going to tell a person that makes less than you to save the same amount as you is not realistic. That doesn't make sense in the real world, because does that really happen? You hear about people that live paycheck to paycheck and they're only able to save a measly amount every month. That's why you don't see people that live in apartments jump to houses like that, like it's nothing. You know what I mean? So that's where I started getting into it. I was just like, this is what the rich do to the poor all the time. The rich designates a way for them to live, even though it's not realistic, even though it doesn't make sense to their mental. You know what I mean? It's like I make $100,000 a year, you make $12,000 a year, so I think you should still save as much as I save. It's like, bro, you're saving that much money because you don't even need that much money. You have no idea what to do with it. You know what I mean? So I have to think more about what to do with my money. And then you're making me use less of my money even after I make only $14,000, and you're telling me to save even more of that $14,000 because you're able to save more of your $100,000. And even after you save out of your $100,000, you still have $80,000 to spend. Do you not? And it's really frustrating because when you're talking to a person like that, they don't make it make sense in their head. They're just like, I'm looking out for your well-being. This has nothing to do with me. It's all about you. And I'm like, if this is all about me, then you would understand my side of the story. You would understand that I think that that's way too low. How come you accept your answer of, I think you should save more, rather than my answer of, I think that's too much, too less for me to work with. It's too little for me to work with. I wasn't supposed to even talk about this topic, bro. I really wasn't. Because this topic really doesn't make sense to me. It's like the question that I'm asking everyone is that if you're making $14,000 a year and you're saving about $2,400, so that makes, how much are you spending? So 1,452 minus 2,400. That's about $11,652. You know, but her argument also is that I don't have to pay for my phone bill. I don't have to pay for rent. And I'm like, you're making very good points. I don't have to pay for those things. And she's like, well, other people in your position pay for those things. That's why they're able to, that's why they save less money. So I think that you should save more money because you're not in their position. You're in a better position than they are. And I'm like, all right, that makes sense. Not really. It doesn't really make sense because they chose, not like they choose, but most of these people choose to live on their own. They choose to live independently than their parents, even though their parents are offering them a place to stay. So me being smart, I'm saying like, no, I shouldn't be moving out when I'm in this position. Maybe I should be staying home. So I stay home. And then that's my decision. That's my personal decision. I can move out. I could be like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to get Section 8. Let's move out. And maybe Section 8 will take, I don't know. I don't know how Section 8 really works. Maybe they take about like 20% of your income. Or maybe it's even 50%. And if they were to take 50% of my income, let's say that is 50%. They were to take 50% of my income, that means I would be working with $500 a month. And I'm asking myself, why would I do that to myself? And probably I'm in a position where they probably won't even take that much. You know what I mean? They'll take maybe $200. Maybe they'll take 20%. Maybe they'll take 15% of my income. I'm not sure how it works though. I'm really not sure. But I'm asking my sister, like, why would I put myself in that position? Doesn't really make sense to me. But other people do it because they're forced into that situation. And I'm like, yes, I understand that they're forced into that situation, but you got to realize that most of those people also become homeless because their parents won't help them out, because the system of Section 8 has changed with Donald Trump in charge. And I'm like, yo, I completely understand that, but I'm not in their positions. So how are you going to compare me to those people in their position? So you should start comparing me to a person that's a little bit smarter or that has a little bit more help. They have more help. Because I'm not a person that doesn't have help. But she's also thinking that, you know, you don't have anything to do. You don't have a car. And like, what if I had a car too? Like, you got to realize that I don't even have a car. And a car becomes a big cost per month. And I was like, if you're going to use my phone bill against me, if you're saying, oh, how do you even pay for your own phone bill? I'm like, no, my parents pay for that. She's like, okay. And I'm like, so what if I had a car? Would you use that against me too? And what it comes down to, it's like, you're talking about money here. You're talking about another person's money. And that person is just like, all right, I have to work with this. I have to do this every week. And I have to keep myself active and do this and do that. Like, for example, when I go out for a walk, I have to do something when I go out for a walk. I have something to do. So when I go out for a walk, I go and I buy stuff. And even though I have EBT, which helped me out a lot because I would go and I would buy groceries and then I would walk back. But if I go out there and I have absolutely nothing to do, it makes me go crazy. It doesn't help me out whatsoever. So I talked to my therapist about that. I'm like, I go out for a walk, but I have to buy something, you know what I mean? I have to go to a destination and then come back from that destination. Like, even if I go to the library, which is a great destination to go to, it's strenuous because I stop at Dunkin' Donuts on my way to the library, get my food there. That's $10 right there. And you got to realize that if you're working with, let's work with the $150 mark. If you're working with $150 a week and you go for a walk 5 times that week, that's $50. Boom, $50 right there. We're not even talking. So that week I'm not going out for a walk at all if I go to New York. So I have to stay home and just ruminate for as long as I can until the next week drops. And then I'm like, okay, I could spend a little bit more money this week. I don't know if anybody understands my argument. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a dumb argument to have, especially when you're like, I'm saving money on top of that. I am saving money, but she's preparing for something that might never happen. That probably won't ever happen. She's preparing for a state where it's like, okay, what if you lose mom and dad? Okay, that's coming soon. We already understand that. My mom and dad are very old. My dad is like 73. My mom is 63. She only has 2 more years to work before she retires. My dad has retired and his health is not looking too well. So when she throws that in my face, I'm like, all right, yes, I understand. They're about to go. What about you though? I have 2 sisters. The oldest one, she's 6 years older than me. I'm 30, she's 36. And then I have another sister that is, I forgot how much older she is of me. Maybe 3 years older. Let's say that she's 3 years older. My older sister is becoming a doctor. So she's going to be making well over 6 figures. You know what I mean? And then my other sister is a teacher. She makes about like $85,000 a year. So she's looking at my parents and she's like, what if you lose your parents? So how much do my parents make? Parents make about, say my dad worked for Pathmark when it was still open. That's about $15 an hour. So he makes about like $35,000 a year. My mom works 2 jobs. So she makes about $50,000 a year. She's making about $50,000 a year. Together they make $80,000. Okay. With $80,000, I'm not even going to count the business because the business brings in about, let's say, $75,000 a year. The business is like a rolling credit. You got to think about it like that. It's at this point, it's rolling credit. It's not making any profit. So when you have to do repairs and stuff like that, you have to take it out of your own money. But then it kind of gets reimbursed. You know what I mean? So whatever repairs needs to be done on the house, it kind of gets reimbursed, and boom, that's how you make that amount. So it pays for itself. It doesn't really give any profit. Maybe it gives like $10,000 profit a year. So let's add $10,000. So my mom makes 50, my dad makes 30, and plus $10,000 profit from their business. That's about $90,000. And they're raising how many children? 3 children. They raised 3 children on $90,000 a year. And I see people do it with much less money. You have 2 parents that are working full-time jobs. They each make only $15 an hour. I don't even think $15 an hour is $30,000. So let's do the math real quick. $15 an hour times 40 hours a week is 600 times 4 weeks. This is before taxes. So 4 weeks is $2,400 times 12 months. It's $28,000. So I was close. It's around $30,000. $28,800. So $29,000. We'll say $30,000. You got to take out taxes too. So taxes and savings, bro. You're looking at that's less than. I'm being generous. Let's say $25,000. 2 parents that work at $15 an hour full time makes about $50,000 per year. And then you ask yourself, how many kids do they have? They have anywhere ranging from 2 to 5, let's say. 2 to 5 kids. Not many are having 5 kids, but if they do, like for me, for example, I know my ex-girlfriend, she has 8 siblings. That means 9 kids. I gotta recheck that. I gotta recount that because I don't think it's 9. I think maybe it's 7. There might be 7 in total. 7 kids. And what does his dad work as? He's disabled. He doesn't make money. And what does the mom work as? She is a druggie. She doesn't make money. So you have those examples, and then you're comparing them to me, a kid that is single, that has a disability, has no kids, and is 30 years old. And then you're comparing me to a person and I'm stable on my medication. You got to remember that too. That's a really big thing. I'm stable on my medication. There are people that are unstable on their medication and they're still working it out. So you have people, I used to be in this group therapy, and you have this one girl that is completely depressed. Like, she has problems, bro. She talks about it all the time, how she is just not happy and how she self-harms herself sometimes and how she changes her medication a lot. She's changing her medication while I've been on the same medication for like 2 years. 2 years, and then you can add the year and a half. So almost 4 years on the same medication. And I work perfectly fine on it. You know what I mean? The first time I had problems, but the second time I'm a little bit better. It's still hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as hard. The daily life makes it hard. That's what makes it hard. Because the medication is like, you're not at 100%. Everybody looks at you like you're at 100%, but you're not at 100%. And it's very hard to show people that, because you don't want to look weak, but you're weak at the same time. You know what I mean? But anyway, so you have people that are at like $50,000 a year. They rent an apartment. They have a car. And that's how they're living. You know what I mean? So my parents make about $90,000 raising 3 kids, and they live in Edison, and they have 1 business. And I'm sitting there looking at both of my sisters like, what's going to happen to you guys? Like, they expect me to live completely 100% independently, so they're not going to give me any extra money. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they'll pay for a dinner. They'll pay for dinner if we ever go out. Okay, we go out like twice a month, 3 times a month. They'll pay for dinner. But then other than that, I'm on my own. You know, and my dad, even my parents are the same way. They don't even give me any money anymore because they're like, you get money from the government, you're good. And I'm like, all right, fine, cool. But why does that mean that you dictate way more to pass your means of understanding? You know what I mean? Like, you're saying that, oh, okay, you're going to live independently, but I'm going to tell you how much money you should save. So I say, okay, fine, you tell me how much money I save, because you think that the amount that I'm taking is a little bit too much and that I should be saving a little more. We come to an agreement. It's $200 a month. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll save $200 a month, just like you ask. I don't get to touch that money, guys. That money is not for me. That is for a future that might never happen. That is for the future. That's like my 401k. You know what I mean? So I can't touch that money. That money is there, and it's just there. Taken out of my paycheck, and I'm like, all right, fine, cool. I understand that I need to save money. So I agree to the bargain of $200 a month. $2,000 a year, $2,400 for a full year. I'm like, all right, cool. But you want me to live completely independently, correct? It's like, yes, we want you to live independently. We're not going to give you any money. This is all on you now. So I'm like, all right, cool. So when they lowered the amount of money that I was receiving from $1,100 to $800 this month, because this month I'm only getting $800 because they took out a little bit extra for Medicare. But then it's going to go back up to $986 or something like that, because they're only taking out about $150 out of my paycheck for Medicare. This is something new. Before I didn't have to pay, but that's because I only had Medicare Part A. Now that I have Medicare Part B, I have to pay for Medicare Part B. So they make me pay a little bit extra for it. So I get paid $800, and then she's like, you know, I don't think that $200 a month is enough for you to be saving. Maybe you should start saving a little more. But I just got to that point right now. I'm like, you want me to live independently, but yet you're dictating how much you take away, even though you're turning your back on the agreement that we just had to make a different agreement. Why? I don't understand. I really don't understand. And I have to argue my point with you. And I just don't understand it. So what would you do in that situation? If you agreed to a certain amount of savings, and then that person starts to make less money, would you increase the savings or would you keep the savings the same? That's my question. Because it's mind-boggling to me. It doesn't make sense for you to be like, I think you should start saving more. I think you should start taking less out of your money, and I think you should start living more frugally. That's what I think. Even though I'm already taking out less. I'm like, well, bro, this doesn't make sense. I was like, bro, how much are you taking out? I'm like, $300 a week. She's like, I think you should take out less. I'm like, bro, why? How am I going to live? So you want me to live on $100 every week? That makes more sense to you? How does that make more sense to you? What do you want me to do during those weeks? You want me to do nothing. I'm already making the sacrifice of only making $150 a week. This is down from $250. I'm like, all right. Because when I only take out $250 a week, I can save money. You know what I mean? And then I buy what I need to buy because I'm not trying to make anything out of this, because I know that trying to convince the world is very, very hard. And I have a disease on top of that. So people are going to be like, why would we support you? You know what I mean? Like, that's your family's job. It's not our job to do it. That's your family's job. And you got to see the amount of people that get famous after getting a disease. I say after getting a disease because I think that's really important. It's very low. It's very low. But so I don't expect anything out of this, but I still like to invest in my craft. You know what I mean? But I'm just going to leave it there. What would you do, guys? What would you do? If a person was making a set amount, you agreed to a set amount to be saving, then they start making less than that. Would you tell them to save more? I would think that you would be like, all right, I think you need to save a little bit less because I need you to be mentally well. I need you to go out. I need you to do things. I can't let you sit inside the house. But she is on the other side where she's like, I need you to stay in the house more. I need you to do less. I don't want you to do more. I think you're doing enough. I think you're doing actually too much. I'm blown away because I'm like, I don't do anything. Like, what the fuck do I do? I don't do anything. I sit at home more than half of the time. May calls me and she's like, come over. And I'm like, yo, I can't even do it because I can't see past this week. I'm making too little money. I can't see past this week, bro. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're really hurting me by doing this. And she doesn't understand that. She's like, no, I'm not hurting you. I'm trying to help you. It's like, you're not helping me. You're just hindering me. You're not supposed to be doing that. I don't know if I'm going to keep the music on these. You know what I mean? I think it's better just to hear me out with no music. But I was going to talk about that. I was going to talk about melody and audio and which one was better, but I don't even feel like talking about that right now because this new problem just came up to me. I was like, I was going to record today. I was like, yo, let's record today. And then that bombardment hit me. And I'm like, it's because you see that I'm paying for stuff. And you think that I'm doing a lot with my money when I'm not really doing much. All I'm doing is saving. Same thing that you're doing. I'm just saving money, dude. You do it too. You save money and you buy stuff. I save my money. This is my boom arm. This is from a month of savings before I could buy it. You know what I mean? But she sees packages coming in and she's just like, I think you need to buy less. And that's exactly what Trump does. And she's like, I'm completely 100% against Trump. I think that he's crazy. But you're doing the same thing that he's doing. Are you not? You have the most money in the house and you're telling everybody else to spend less. Like, that's what she does with everybody, bro. She does that with my mom. She does it with my dad. She's like, I think that she dictates how my parents spend their money. She's like, I think you should start spending more because you have a lot in savings. So start spending more money. And where does the money go? To her. She's like, spend more money on me. And it's like, bro, where are you going with your logic? Like, where are you going, bro? It doesn't make sense. And then she looks at me, I'm making $14,000 a year. And she's like, I think you need to start saving more. And I'm like, how much more do you want me to save? She's like, I think you make enough money. I'm like, bro, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I'm gonna leave it there, bro. I'm just pissed off, bro. What more is there to say? I don't know if people agree with me or disagree with me, bro. But when you're living, it's all because you're not living the life. You know what I mean? That's the only reason why you can make those assumptions that a person should be spending less money and saving more money. And you know, that's my biggest thing. It's like, bro, I don't even get to touch that money. So usually people save money to touch it later on, and I don't get to touch that money. It's crazy, bro. Whatever.